Turtwig, Chimchar, and Piplup are the greatest starter trio of all time. Torterra's got incredible bulk, stab earthquakes, and reliable recovery. Infernape can fire off speedy, high base power physical and special attacks, while also accessing a wide range of coverage moves. And Empoleon has one of the best defensive typings in the game, with a whopping 11 resistances and 1 immunity. You really can't go wrong when choosing your Sinnoh starter, but one of them's gotta be the best, right? So I've designed a completely flawless and logically sound test to determine just that. Turtle, Monkey, and Duck will work together to beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Platinum, gaining points for how they perform against major and minor boss battles. 1 point for an assist and 2 points for a KO. Whoever has the most points when we enter the Hall of Fame is crowned the indisputable best Sinnoh starter. Let's meet our 3 contestants. Hailing from the proud Terra clan is Mark the Careful Turtwig. Bringing victory home to his tribe would prove that slow and steady truly does win the race. Challenging him, though, is Helly the mild Chimchar from the Inferno clan. Helly has the heart of a warrior and the kidney of a mailman. Our final contestant from a long line of the Feather clan's most distinguished royals is Dylan the timid Piplup. Don't let his Nepo Birdie status distract from the fact that he's a hard worker and as ready as anyone to do what it takes to win. Man, what I wouldn't do to have this kind of luck with natures in any other playthrough. Anyways, as the competition kicks off, my 3 teammates are tasked with quickly defeating Birdkeeper Jame. Helly rotisseries his lead Starly for the first 2 points of the challenge, and then Mark tags in and takes care of Piplup with a few absorbs to tie the lead. Despite an early evolution for Helly, I let Dylan take charge against the first gym leader Rourke so that he can get some points on the board. Bubbles take out Geodude and Onix, but despite our plus speed nature, Cranidos moves first to get off a Leer, dropping our defense. So not wanting to take a headbutt to Dylan's Bird Brain Dome, I switch to Mark, who gets the KO with a Razor Leaf and wins us the battle. That's 2 points for the Terrapin and 5 points for the Pipster, who's now found himself in the lead, though obviously at this point in the game, things can change pretty quickly. Make a guess for who you think will win in the comments down below, and while you're there, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's a really easy way to help me out completely for free. After Mark and Dylan enter their awkward teenage years, it's time for the first of the many fights against the Galactic Commanders, which I'll count for our contestants' scores. Dylan grows his lead by taking down Zubat, though by the time Perugly comes in, the toxic damage has racked up so much that he can't afford to stay in to get an additional point with an assist. So instead, I bring in Mark, who despite an early critical hit from Fake Out, brings honor to his clan by going toe-to-toe with the fugly feline thanks to a critical hit of his own. I had originally planned to switch to Helly for the KO with a priority Mach Punch, but instead it's Mark who gets a crucial 2 points to maintain his 1 point deficit on our early game leader. The good news for our fiery redhead, who's now in 3rd, is that she should be able to rack up some easy points by torching Gardenia's grass types. Against Turtwig though, Flame Wheel's not quite enough for the KO, so he gets up a Reflect. And then, even though Gardenia heals, Helly rips an untimely critical hit, bypassing the defense boost granted by the turtle's screen and netting a clean KO. This is inconvenient because it means that Cherim now takes resisted physical hits for 3 more turns, and threatens with much more damage than Turtwig thanks to her Leech Seed. So I decide to switch to Mark to remove the Leech Seed before switching back and netting Helly another 2 points. And even though Mark technically didn't do any damage to Cherim, I think that a purposeful switch-in still counts as an assist. Helly 2-shots Roserade with Flame Wheel for an easy dub, so now she's in the lead with 8 big ones. The storming of the Eterna City Galactic building is a little tricky since the commander in charge is one of the harder mini-bosses in the entire game. Jupiter's lead Zubat has a way to hit all 3 of my champions for super effective damage. But the real issue is her bulky, critical hit-obsessed Night Slash spamming Skuntank. Plus, Dylan can just take out Zubat with 2 Bubble Beams, eating only a bit of damage from Giga Drain in the process. This means that she can stay in against Pepe Le Pew and go for some growls. Thanks to a smoke screen, we missed the first one, but after a Fighter of the Day Slash, our second one connects. I then risk a critical hit to have Dylan fire off a Bubble Beam, and thankfully it goes unpunished. So our little prince retreats to his Pokeball, and Helly takes the field, graciously resisting Night Slashes with her secondary fighting type. Flame Wheel does shockingly good damage, and since we outspeed, we should have this all locked up. A Petraberry shrugs off the effects of poison gas. Another Flame Wheel drops the tanky cat-like skunky thing into the red. We endure a second poison gas, and then the battle is over with one last fiery strike. Penguin and Monkey are tied for the lead as they enter the double digits. Now, since my trio of fighters is already close to the next level cap, I need to be really careful to avoid any optional trainers. But I've spent years expertly honing my overworld movements, allowing me to easily and efficiently navigate the perils of cycling road. Such grace, such beauty. This is what peak human performance looks like. Jesus wept. In Hearthome City, we've got arguably our hardest challenge so far. Fantina's Mismagius. To beat her speedy Shadow Ball spamming ace, my teammates are gonna need to put aside their competitive aspirations and work together as a team. I've got a game plan, though as is often the case when facing off against a Pokemon with such a raw power advantage, it is gonna require a splash of luck. It starts by sending out Helly against Fantina's lead Duskull. While the Spectre can't deal much damage, she can threaten burns with Will-O-Wisp, so after setting up a layer of Stealth Rocks, I hit her with a taunt. Then I switch to Mark, who's now free to set up 2 curses without risk of getting burned. The downside of this is that he does take some chip damage from Duskull's various low-powered attacks, but it ultimately doesn't change anything against Mismagius as she comes in second. With the tiny amount of chip from Helly's rocks, Mismagius is now dead to a +2 bite. We have a Lumberry if she opts for a Confuse Ray, so all we gotta do is dodge one single critical hit from Shadow Ball. Mismagius unleashes her attack, and Mark survives, taking the clean KO to ensure the victory. Haunter still remains, and I'm not quite sure how much a Shadow Claw will do here. A critical hit could be bad, but I don't want to errantly switch to Dylan on a Hypnosis or Confuse Ray, so I stay in. And yep, a critical hit there definitely would have killed Mark. But who cares? Another bite gets the KO. Mark catapults into the lead with 13 points, and the 3rd gym badge is ours. Uh-oh, sounds like Poppy's barking up a storm again. You know, for a little dog, she's got quite the bark. Fortunately, I can use my everyday headphones from the sponsor of this video, Raycon, to drown her out. She'll stop. Eventually. See, the everyday headphones have hybrid active noise cancellation, which helps me focus when Poppy's barking at an Amazon delivery truck, the ghost in our basement, or a squirrel in the yard. And this noise canceling functionality in a pair of headphones at the under $100 price point is really rare. Plus, Raycon's latest model is better than ever with a 40-hour battery life, a comfortable ergonomic design, and Raycon's quick charge functionality that yields 2 hours of battery from just 15 minutes of charging. With spring officially sprung and Mother's Day right around the corner, the everyday headphones make the perfect gift to show your appreciation. My mom is a busybody and loves being outdoors. Rain or shine, she's always active, and with her everyday headphones, she'll be able to enjoy her favorite music, podcasts, and calls from her favorite son in crystal clear sound. Okay, full disclosure, my mom doesn't listen to podcasts. Gun to my head, I don't even know if she knows what they are, but Poppy's mom does listen to podcasts. So if you want to be like Poppy and give your mom the gift of premium sound wherever she goes, head to buyraycon.com/flagon20 to get 20% off site-wide. Thanks so much to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to the challenge. With Fantina defeated, it's time to turn back to our Sinnoh Starter challenge. The second fight against our rival Jaime on the edge of Hearthome City adds a few points to everyone's scores. Dylan's the greatest benefactor as he takes 2 KOs on Staravia and Ponyta. Helly deals with Roselia, and Mark takes care of James's own Piplup, meaning that glory is still anyone's to grab as we arrive in Veilstone City. But it's here where Mark gains a temporary advantage against his competitors, since with the level cap of 32, he can fully evolve into his final ground-shattering form, where he immediately learns Earthquake, which cleanly sweeps Maylene's 3 fighting types for badge number 4. Anyone want to rethink their guess? It's not too late to edit that comment. No one will know. The new level cap means that Dylan and Helly are now free to evolve, such that our team is at full power for the 3rd and possibly easiest fight against the eccentric Jaime. Once again, Dylan takes out the duck and the cow, Helly chars the plant, and Mark snipes off the little prince. Nope. Okay, pretty sure he's now in range to a torrent boosted critical hit Bubble Beam, so just to be safe, I switch back into Dylan, who takes the KO on his underling with a Brine, which means that in one single battle, Dylan has slashed Mark's lead to just 2 points, though the fight against Crasher Wake and his water type should give Mark another opportunity to rack up some easy points. Our foe leads with his Gyarados, and thanks to the Intimidate, we're gonna need some Leech Seed assistance here. Unfortunately, after tanking a pretty nasty waterfall, Mark fumbles his first attempt. Classic Mark with the fumble. So Gyarados is now free to get off another waterfall, which triggers our held Citrus Berry before Mark does indeed connect with Leech Seed number 2. I decide to switch to Dylan, both to shake off the Intimidate and to hit Gyarados with a Rock Tomb so that we can gain the speed advantage. Unfortunately, the Rock type move triggers the rare AI switch, sending Quagsire in on our Brine. Since it does what appears to be just over 50%, I let Dylan take this KO, netting him an unexpected 2 points that were marked for Mark. That brings Gyarados back in, so after eating another waterfall, I try to just snipe the kill with a boosted Brine, but unfortunately we come up just short. I can't afford to be taking a ton of damage on Dylan, because he's our answer to Wake's Float Soul, so I switch to Mark to set up another Leech Seed as Wake uses a Hyper Potion. That's fine, because all Mark has to do is hit a Leech Seed. Okay, a flinch isn't great, but it's fine, because... yeah, no, this is bad. Mark was not locked in there, and now Dylan's gonna need to clean up his mess. Since he resists all of Gyarados' moves, we do manage to outdamage him with Rock Tombs that graciously don't miss. This is what locked in looks like, Mark. Unfortunately, we're sitting at just 24 HP by the time Floatzel comes in third, and I'm really struggling to see how we get out of this. The good news is that Dylan is still not dead to any of Floatzel's attacks, so barring a critical hit, we can stay in, barely tank a crunch, and hit the frail Sea Weasel with a Brine. From there, we've got one last play, a switch to Heli on what I can only hope is not a critical hit Aqua Jet. Heli's HP bar stops at 47 HP. She lives, and with a Citrus Berry, she barely crawls out of range to another priority hit, meaning that with a speedy close combat, she KOs Floatzel, and by margins so thin they'd put Polly's Garlic Slices to shame, we've avoided disaster to win the 5th gym badge. That was an abysmal performance from Mark, who should have been able to easily net at least 4 points. Instead, it's Dylan who walks away with 5. And somehow Heli, the fire type, got 2 points in the water type gym? Wild, and things don't get much better for Mark as the Team Galactic storyline kicks into full gear. Over the course of the next few gym splits, he's gonna struggle to find more than a handful of favorable matchups. Take, for example, the first fight against Cyrus in Celestic Town. Heli kills Sneasel with close combat, while Dylan takes care of Golbat and Murkrow with a few Ice Beams, allowing our Penguin Lord's lead to grow. As we face off against Jame in Canalave City, he finally has a handful of problematic Pokemon, though as usual, Dylan kicks things off by scoring 2 points on his lead Staraptor. This brings in Heracross, so I switch to Heli on a Brick Break before taking the quick KO with a Fire Punch. Oops. Dylan comes back in for a showdown between the Penguin pals, but it's short-lived. All he does is drop our foe's speed with a Rock Tomb before switching to Mark, who now takes the KO with an Earthquake. Rapidash's best fire-type move is just Fire Spin, so I let Mark stay in, shrug off a takedown, and then take the KO with another Earthquake. And you know what? He's done such a great job in this fight that he can stay in to kill Roserade as well. So that's 6 points for our Titan Turtle, though with Dylan's 3, it's still not enough to reclaim the lead. Now, I know it might look dire for the Inferno clan, but don't you worry because Byron's the next gym leader, and Heli's hands down the best counter to his steel types that I could possibly have. Flamethrowers slice through Magneton and Steelix like a pair of perfectly cooked fish fillets, and a quad-effective close combat cleanly one-shots Byron's Ancient Ace, netting our Femme Fatale a quick 6 points to get right back into the competition. There's 2 more Team Galactic mini-boss fights here, which are nothing more than opportunities to score score a few easy points. Against Saturn, Dylan blasts Golbat out of the sky, Mark San Francisco's Toxicroak, and Heli torches Bronzor, so points-wise, it's a wash. But against Mars, Mark stays on the sidelines as Dylan again takes the KO on Golbat before Heli chains KOs against Bronzor and Perugly. Wait, look at how much damage this critical hit fake out does. Man, minus defense natures are a hell of a drug. Anyways, this means that sweet Mark has fallen into last place as we arrive in Snow Point City, and well, he's a glorified bench warmer as we face off against the Ice-type gym leader Candice. In fact, Heli is quite literally the perfect counter for dealing with her otherwise problematic team, because Infernape is one of the only Pokemon in the game that's fast enough and strong enough to take one-hit KOs on all of Candice's teammates while also baiting out Abomasnow last. The reason for this is that Gen 4 Switch-In AI prioritizes Pokemon that have super effective moves against the player's current Pokemon. When there's instances where multiple Pokemon have super effective moves, they evaluate the type matchups between the two Pokemon, placing higher scores when the enemy Pokemon has super effective types and lower scores when they have resisted types. This is why, after Sneasel goes down, Piloswine comes in first. Earthquake is her super effective move, and her two typings result in a net neutral matchup against Infernape. One Flamethrower and down she goes, bringing in Frostlass third. Psychic is her super effective move, and her typing results in a 2x resisted matchup, thereby jumping over Abomasnow, who still has a super effective move in Water Pulse, but has a typing that results in a quad resisted matchup. A Pokemon like Rapidash or Houndoom, while still fast enough and strong enough to get the KOs, would bait Abomasnow in before Frostlass, even with the quad resistance, since Frostlass would not have a super effective move. This means that Abomasnow would set up Hail with Snow Warning, thereby triggering Frostlass's Snow Cloak ability, which can quickly lead to some major problems. But there's no such issue for Heli, since without Snow Cloak, we're free to get the KO on Frostlass, and then obviously Abomasnow for a whopping 8 points and another lead change as I nab the penultimate gym badge. Jupiter absolutely demolishing James signals that we've made it to the climax of the Team Galactic storyline. And Turtle Troopers, I've got some bad news for ya. Mark is cooked. In the second fight against Cyrus, Heli scores 2 points from KOing Sneasel, and I give her another assist point for setting up the Stealth Rocks to ensure that Dylan can get the clean KOs against Crobat and Honchkrow. In the Saturn rematch, Dylan once again kills his Golbat, but now that Toxicroak knows X-Scissor, instead of taking the KO with Mark, I just use him to safely switch to Heli, who can take the KO with a Choice Specs Flamethrower before doing the same thing to Bronzor. And you know what? Mark can have a point for being an intentional pivot that counts as an assist. So now we've made it to the multi-battle against Mars and Jupiter, which means it's time to enact my favorite strategy for this fight, spamming Choice Specs Surf. And Dylan happens to be an ideal candidate for that since he resists almost every single move that the commander's Pokemon know. This strategy also means that Dylan, perhaps unfairly, is about to rack up some serious points for the Feather Clan. He gets 4 from the turn 2 double KO on both Bronzors. And we'll give him another 2 points for killing Munchlax because that's basically a public service. On the next turn, our point-hungry penguin hurts himself in confusion, so James's Rapidash goes down before Dylan can fire off another Surf that kills Skuntank and scores him 2 more points. Our next Surf kills James' Staraptor and Mars's Golbat, so that's another 4 points, why not? Then Perugly and Heracross come out, so a double-up kills the bug before we bring Perugly into the red, triggering her Citrus Berry, and then kill Golbat. But that finally results in the platonically ideal board state. Double Penguin Pals. And since we're the faster of the Penguin Pals, it's Dylan who lands the final KO of the fight, catapulting him into a 10-point lead over Heli and a 26-point lead over little old Mark. This means that we've made it to the final fight against Cyrus, and once again my trio of competitors are going to need to put aside their differences and focus on getting through this battle alive. The main issue is Cyrus's Gyarados. Remember what happened against Crasher Wakes? Well, Mark is an even worse counter this time around because Cyrus's Gyarados knows Ice Fang. He also knows Earthquake, so Dylan isn't our answer either. Instead, we'll need a different approach, which begins by using Heli to set up a Sunny Day okay against Cyrus's lead Houndoom. In the short term, that's actually unideal since it turbocharges our foe's flamethrower. I thought he'd go for Thunderfang, which is why Heli is holding a Lumberry instead of a Citrus Berry, so if Flamethrower had crit, we'd actually have been in some serious trouble. But it didn't, so a close combat kills Houndoom and baits in Gyarados second. He's got a super effective move and a quad effective type matchup, which is why Gyarados jumps over Honchkrow and Crobat in team order. Anyways, from here I switch to Mark on an Earthquake. The sun ensures that a rogue waterfall wouldn't do much damage, which means that Gyarados is now always going for Ice Fang, granting a resistant switch back to Heli. This is always safe because in the harsh sunlight, Pokemon can't get frozen. And now that she's no longer intimidated, Heli can rip a quad-effective Thunder Punch for the clean KO on Cyrus's trickiest Pokemon. And once again, we'll give Mark a point for the assist. Taking care of Cyrus's remaining 3 teammates is the responsibility of Dylan, who resists all of their attacks, save for Honchkrow's special heat waves. Since we're slower than all 3, there's potential to get screwed by some bad RNG, but Dylan claws his way to victory with 27 HP to spare, growing his already sizable lead to 12 points. With such a little game left to play, it's starting to look like this challenge is all but over. Mark is certainly out of it, though I suppose a late run by Heli could still make things interesting. Now that the world's saved, we can head to Sunyshore City and face off against the final gym leader Volkner, whose electric types are all buried by a few earthquakes from our 3rd place challenger after he sets up with Rock Polish. It's an impressive performance that's sure to make the Terra Clan proud, and it's a solid 8 points added to his score, but that's not nearly enough. There's just 6 fights left to earn points, and based on the matchups, Mark can't do it. From here on out, he's just gonna have to play for the love of the game. There's one last battle before the Elite Four, and it's the final matchup against our rival. Though with some patient routing, Jaime is no longer the threat he once was, even with a full team of 6. Staraptor with a quiet nature gets outsped by Dylan, though in order to ensure I get the kill, I first switch to Mark, who eats a close combat. This drops the Predator's defenses and baits in Aerial Ace, letting me bring Dylan back in and get the now guaranteed KO. Critically, Heracross gets baited in next, and with a Drill Peck, we nab another quick KO. So Snorlax is 3rd, meaning that it's time to go back to Mark on a pitiful Earthquake. Needless to say, ours hits a skosh harder. With Snorlax down and out, Rapidash comes in 4th, so I switch to Heli on a critical hit Fire Blast. Fortunately, a close combat is enough to get the OHKO, so the crit doesn't matter as Heli's now free to chain KOs against Empoleon and Roserade, winning the battle and slightly cutting down on Dylan's lead. As we brace ourselves to challenge the Pokemon League, Mark is at 44 points, Heli is at 58, and Dylan is at 68. But things can still change quite a bit. And points aside, there's no guarantee that I can even make it to the Hall of Fame with just these 3 Pokemon. Cynthia and her Garchomp in particular are a major threat that I'll somehow need to figure out an answer for. So, once and for all, let's become champions and find out who's the best Sinnoh starter. First up is Aaron, and he Second up is Bertha, and she leads with a Whiscash, so I have Mark hit her with an Earthquake for fantastic damage as she goes for a Sandstorm. Then it's a switch to Dylan, who shrugs off an Aqua Tail and takes the KO with a Surf. The rest of Bertha's team are all easy one-shots, starting first with Glysaur, who goes down to an Ice. Oh, crap. Wow, never punished. Well, in order to avoid falling asleep, I gotta switch to Mark, and because of Hippowdon's obsession with getting off yawns, it takes a bit of maneuvering to bring Dylan back in safely. But once I do, a Surf gets the KO, and making sure to pay a little more attention, Dylan cleanly executes a successful sweep for 10 full points, though Mark did manage to sneak in those 2 assists. The third member of the Elite Four is Flint, and against his fire types, Dylan's secondary steel typing is a major liability. Mark could rip some super effective earthquakes, but his grass typing obviously makes that impossible. So instead, it's Heli who, learning a thing or two from her teammate, can rip soft sand boosted earthquakes to cleanly and fully sweep her second Elite Four team. I'm not sure if this is a testament to Heli's power or Flint's frailty. Either way, there's now a two-way tie for the lead as we enter Lucian's chamber. Though if all goes well, this matchup will be all Marky Mark. Against Mr. Mime, our tanky turtle sets up a rock polish to gain the speed advantage and a swords dance to boost his attack. Mr. Mime rips a pretty strong psychic after our first swords dance, so not wanting to risk a critical hit, instead of going for a second one, I just take the kill with a single crunch. This makes things just a hair riskier because Mr. Mime set up Reflect, meaning that we don't guarantee the KO against Espeon, even with our held black glasses. A low roll against him, followed up by a critical hit Signal Beam, would be the end of our grass-type Titan. So, Crunch comes out, and Mark pulls through. Lucian brings in Bronzong third on the final turn of Reflect, so instead of doing pitiful damage, I decide to just hit the bulky bell with a Leech Seed as they go for a Calm Mind. The small amount of recovery ensures that Mark should live even a critical hit from Psychic, and now that the Reflect is worn off, our neutral Crunch does a massive amount of damage before Bronzong greedily goes for another Calm Mind. So that just about seals things up. Crunches now take out Bronzong, Alakazam, and Gallade, bringing Mark to a respectable 56 points as we've defeated the Elite Four. Now, technically, Mark could actually make this a three-way tie by single-handedly defeating all 6 of Cynthia's teammates. No, wait, that's not how math works. He's down by a full 22 points, not 12. Glad I caught that. But forget about our starter challenge for just a second, because my primary concern is figuring out a way to actually win this fight. Cynthia's team is very strong, and her Garchomp in particular can hit all 3 of my Pokemon for super effective damage. For the first time since Fantina, we're indisputably outgunned, but we made it through that, so I have faith that we can make it through this. Our battle begins, and as Cynthia sends out Spiritomb, Dylan takes the field to rip a massive Choice Spec Surf. It's not enough for the KO, so... Oh wait, that's a critical hit. Nice! Well, Dylan now immediately baits out Cynthia's ace, allowing me to have as much HP on all 3 of my teammates as possible to deal with her. I switch to Mark on a resisted Earthquake, but from here, I need to take a risk. We need to dodge a critical hit from Flamethrower. It's terrifying, but it's our only way forward. So I hold my breath as Mark's HP bar slowly ticks closer and closer to 0. But then it stops at 75 HP. He's done it. He lives, and after a Citrus Berry activates, he connects with a Leech Seed. This means that we can use Protect to stall a turn and get to nearly full HP. An extreme high roll critical hit could still kill Mark from this range, but our Turtle's days of fumbling are behind him, and with a Giga Drain, he can do enough damage for the Leech Seed chip to trigger Garchomp's Citrus Berry. And then it's time to bring in Helly. She takes basically nothing from a Flamethrower, and now that Cynthia's Beastly Dragon is at 50%, we can finish her off with a Pomeg Berry fueled Ice-type natural gift. Our greatest foe is down, but there's still 4 Pokemon left. As Milotic comes in next, Helly and Dylan are once again tied for the lead at 80 points apiece. With a U-turn, Helly does a respectable amount of damage and brings in Dylan on a resisted Surf. But now we have a problem. Dylan does no Grass Knot, though even with the chip, it's not enough to KO the specially tanky Milotic, which wouldn't be too bad if we knew that she was going for her highest damaging move, which is just Surf. But the Sea Serpent also knows Mirror Coat, and if she goes for it, she'll absolutely kill Dylan. I can't risk that, not with the back half of Cynthia's team still alive. So instead, I have to switch to Mark, who frustratingly does come in on a Surf. But now that he baits Ice Beam, I can bring Helly back in. Ice Beam miraculously does not freeze, and she can then do another bit of chip with U-turn as Dylan once again comes in on a Surf. So finally, Grass Knot gets the KO, and Cynthia's down to her last 3 Pokemon as Dylan once again inches back into the lead. The matchup, at least based on the number of Pokemon, is now even, but here's where I have to start making some tough calls. Helly can easily kill Lucario with a Flamethrower, though she's not bulky enough to tank the combination of an Aura Sphere on the switch followed up by a priority Extreme Speed, which means that my only play is to send out Mark and let him go down. In one last act of defiance, he does survive an Aura Sphere with 9 HP, but then an Extreme Speed takes him out, steps away from the Hall of Fame. With that sacrifice though, Helly can come in and take the KO with a flamethrower, netting Mark one last assist from the great beyond and bringing his final score to 59. Rest in peace, you goddamn hero. You will be missed. Togekiss is next, so Helly uses U-turn for a tiny bit of chip and the switch to Dylan on a resisted air slash. We outspeed, so Dylan's free to rip a super effective ice beam, but it's just barely not enough for the KO, and with a shockwave, Togekiss sends Dylan to meet his dear friend on the other side. As I bring in my third and final living champion, Cynthia heals with a full restore, but it doesn't matter. Close combat is a guaranteed 2-shot, so Helly takes her third KO of the fight. And as Cynthia sends out her last Pokemon, we know we've done it. Helly KOs Roserade with a single flamethrower, winning not just the final battle of the run, but also the Sinnoh Starters Showdown with 87 points. In the end though, it's hard to accept this as anything more than a hollow victory. What's the point of winning if there's no one left to celebrate with? Helly began this journey wanting nothing more than to bring honor to the Inferno clan, but along the way, through strife and pain, she found something far more rewarding. A clan all her own. And that's something, without question, that she would give up her victory to save. Sure, Helly got the most points, but maybe, just maybe, the best Sinnoh starter is the friends we made along the way. All right, so what do we think? Anyone? Yeah, I was confused. Me too. I don't understand the nickname theme. What's a Helly? It's actually a reference to one of the biggest television shows. Yeah, Severance. Way to capitalize on a show's popularity a few weeks too late. I was actually talking about the ending. Ah, yeah. Okay, what do you got? I mean, it's really corny. It feels like an after-school special. Well, I think it's meant to be ironic. You know, tongue-in-cheek. It's actually pretty smart. Is it though? I mean, okay, you got ironic, but all I got was sappy nonsense. Like, I actually rolled my eyes. How are we gonna know what the audience is fully gonna interpret? But that's the beauty of it, right? It works both ways. It can be affecting for people who are emotionally invested, but taken sarcastically by those who aren't. Alienating people who think it's too cringy is just a risk you have to take. Yeah, I mean, I really don't think that anybody's gonna get emotionally invested in this. That guy's been crying for 5 minutes. No, I haven't. Well, this was a really fascinating discussion, guys. Does anyone else have anything they want to express? Any questions, comments, concerns? So when's the Run and Bun video coming out?